Hi there, Shane. We'll just be honest, you're the only attendee at the moment. Sebastian's out there as an attendee as well, really just to submit some questions. And just prior to this call, Dutch and I, these are the people that are on the call. Dutch and I were working on your time zone question.
Oh, that's great.
So you said you're using Docker, and the solution is just to run through. I'm the director of product here. Sebastian is one of our onboarding engineers. Dutch is one of our expert field engineers, and Mandy is our developer advocate. She runs this really cool Twitch stream that we're about to do some stuff with. And cool. Tracy, introduced herself already. So that will let me kill the slides here. There's our community forums.
Can you guys hear me, or is it?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay.
So we were just, so I don't know if you've seen the welcome projects available, but we do, kind of have these Docker environments out there. And
yeah, I actually, I mean, I said Docker in the thing just to make it a little more easier, but I think I built it out in Kubernetes eventually.
Sure.
Started in Docker, and I just noticed what happened to me is I noticed that my I think some audit reports were coming, but they were in UTC time, and then I was like, oh, I don't even know where that setting is. And then my last company had used Rundeck quite extensively, but of course it was just a standalone, so it was just a config file we usually updated. So I was kind of got confused about how to do it here.
Yeah, I actually found a really old post that still applies. I will put it in chat here. I gotta switch to everyone. That was where I sort of dug out of the depths, but
okay.
You're just adding an option to the Java command that runs Rundeck, so that our Docker image just runs the jar version of Rundeck ultimately behind the scenes. Okay. And all I had to do in my Docker compose, if you will, and then you can translate that to a Docker or however else you're going to run it, is just add this onto the command. And I just tested this. It did work. I didn't get all the way through testing, sending a report or doing something, but it did show up. So when I run this, and then let's see if I can get a screen up here. Right, so when I run this, this is that environment running locally. You can see the scrolling in the background is just my Docker stuff running. If I go to the system report and look in my configuration, right, my time zone is now EST, cool. And I'm in Pacific, so all of them, I picked it Eastern,
right, okay,
because I'm in California, so my computer and everything else is either going to go to GMT or Pacific, right, between the two of them. There's no reason for me to have anything Eastern. It's picking up Eastern, and these settings with the system report are read from memory. They're not read from like just a random config file. So it's actually using this entry.
Cool.
So that would be our answer to how you chase that one down. Any other questions? Or
I don't know. I didn't know I'd be on my own here, so I've got to.
Oh, I'm not putting you on the spot. Just like what version of Rundeck are you using?
Probably the latest.
Okay. Are you just getting started with Rundeck then?
Well, so my last company we basically built our whole DR solution using Rundeck and a tool called Zerto. Okay. So we kind of combined the two, and we're able to basically give kind of like a portal for all the different app owners. It was a bank, and there was maybe a dozen different app owners who would own multiple apps, and so we kind of facilitated that using sort of Rundeck to build out, and then that gave them the ability to add in like in a stepped way sort of SQL commands they wanted to do, and different maybe update XML files, things like this. So that was kind of what it was mainly used for, and then we used it for a bunch of other things. I think I ended up building out a Linux patching thing for about 500 servers, some stuff like that. And now I've moved to a different job, and then I'm using it kind of as an API glue between for our pipelinings and for like a Terraform into Ansible, a bit of a glue there, and then some reporting and some customer deployments and upgrades and stuff like that.
Customer deployments, are you like an MSP?
No, we have a SaaS solution
Okay.
for EMR data, so electronic medical records, and so it's like it was an old on-prem like Windows.net app, and then we use remote desktop app. If you've ever done that, it's pretty
Right.
hacky, but that was a way we could offer cloud with what we had, and then we're building kind of a web portal in the background. But so what was great about Rundeck was that it could handle both Windows and Linux stuff. So you could hit the ground running for because all that stuff's in Windows, and then a lot of the backend stuff is in Linux when possible. So it helped us with that.
Okay. Interesting. I like that term as an API glue. I've definitely used it for that as well. MuleSofty almost, where we're taking webhooks and synchronizing data from GitHub to Jira when we need to, and or other tools on our back end. But I was just running these couple jobs here on the screen to show you a feature that we have incubating in our enterprise version.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's called job data. We kind of covered it in our last set of release notes here, so that's probably a good place to start. What was that? 3? I think 3. No, it was 2. So we have this result data, job data feature where instead of just dealing with the log output, you can structure the output into sort of that just resident data that will sit there in the activity history. So if these jobs are done, these little install jobs that I need, yep. So this is just kind of a silly example of some job data. I hope that everything I needed was installed. But if I look at the log output, right, I've got all this extra stuff. Like I did a roll of the dice, I got a fortune, got some other data. Like this is a sort of a lot to process, and it's in our, it's in the log output. But if I go to the result data, and there is one bug, so we'll refresh here, and then it will come back. This is structured data that's pulled out of that and stored in a JSON. So I can come to this endpoint every time and get the results of this job in whatever
that's
format
great. Yeah, that's very
I
useful.
specified. So it's consistent, right? If they change their APIs, I don't have to go do a bunch of other work, because I can come back and say, oh yeah, I still just want my fortune or my D6 roll or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
We're looking for, reason I'm bringing this up is we're looking for like better examples than our, dice roll and
Sure.
fortune telling. So
I mean, for like when you showed me that, so one problem we have at our enterprise is that a lot of the customer data actually ends up being embedded in the Postgres database. And then to be consistent, we don't really have like a source of truth, because at the end of the day, the database ends up being the best source of truth, but it's not reasonable to access it maybe in like an options drop down. Like sometimes I use those CGI scripts with Rundeck to maybe do like a user list or a site list, whereas something like that could be in our organization, I could see us using something like that to build out sort of a JSON customer database, where we just build out this tool that scours our database and then gives us an API result that we can just call directly.
Yep.
Rather than kind of putting burden or sort of touching a database, which generally you don't really like doing if it's like a customer database.
Yeah. We've also had someone sort of realize you can have this over time. So you could run, a job on a regular basis, not trying to turn it into really a monitoring or any sort of stats thing, but these become resident over time that you could pull through the data and
right.
Pull, okay, I had a D6 roll that time. Like, I don't know if I'll do it, but I thought I could just run it enough times and then show the stats of what numbers are coming up more often over a period of time.
Yeah, I guess you could probably link it with Grafana and then have some sort of like
Yep.
table-based maybe user lookup or something like this for auditing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so that just popped in my mind with that API glue, you know, and then abstracting some of that. But glad we could get your question answered. There was one other question for recording sake that came in on the pre-questionnaire, and this question was: notifications and webhooks don't work in my system. I have added plugins. Private key doesn't work as well. I'm not sure if the person that submitted this question is on, because we only have a Hotmail email address, and it doesn't look like it aligns to some of the other attendees that have joined. But there's not quite enough information to answer this question. So I'll just take a stab at some of the general troubleshooting that we would do. To start, what plugins, or what do you mean when notification webhooks don't seem to work? We would need to know what notifications, what webhooks we're talking about. When it comes to installing plugins, there's a specific folder you can drop the jar file. It should apply automatically depending on the plugin. These should apply automatically, but always good measure to just restart Rundeck with those files in place. And then, are you getting any errors in the service log? Subsequently, the standard troubleshooting of what version of Rundeck are you running on, what platform, etc. That's always helpful to know. But we would definitely need a bit more information to provide an answer to that particular question. And then I'm not quite sure what private key doesn't work as well means. I don't like. There's a lot of different places that keys are used or implemented or come into play when it comes to Rundeck. So if the person that submitted this, we didn't get a name, we just got an email address. If your email was at hotmail.com, you submitted a pre-question and you're either on, if you're on the call, you can raise your hand. If you're not and you're watching the recording, definitely open up a ticket on our forums. We've got the Rundeck forums on the PagerDuty community site, as well as a few other channels. There's a few other channels that are Rainer, our probably mostly famous community advocate out there, stocks and checks out Google groups and Stackstorm and Libra chats, etc. But these PagerDuty forums, I pay a lot of attention to. A lot of other people pay a lot of attention to. Feel free to post your question in here, and we'll be happy to help with some of those details.
Great, thanks, Forrest. We do have some additional time, so if anyone on the line has some questions, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A for our panel of experts.
In the meantime, I'm going to put Mandy on the spot and see if there's any cool Twitch streams coming up that we need to know about.
Oh, well, let's see. So Tuesday, we're doing, this one's a PagerDuty focus split with BuildKite. So BuildKite's a CI/CD tool, and we're going to go over change events and using those with your PagerDuty account and working through that with BuildKite as an example. So I have a couple folks on for there. And then later in the month, we'll have a couple other streams that we're doing integrations and stuff like that with, and we'll plan to do some Rundeck integrations and things like that as that continues on. I'll put the channel links in the chat so folks can join us. We're also doing periodic live coding and other things. We'll have other content coming up soon too, because we're just getting started. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Mandy and I have talked about, and feel free to respond to this idea in chat. But we talked about doing just sort of a live on the fly Rundeck coding thing, whether it's create a job, or maybe we'll write a plugin or update some plugins, or maybe we'll even just submit a PR request on the community project out there and catch my team off guard with some new random PR that something we want to fix or enhance. So yeah, if that's something that would be of interest to you, Mandy and I can try and work on getting that on the schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not seeing any more questions come in. We have looks like a new attendee, Mike. If you have any questions, feel free to drop something in the Q&A panel there, or I learned something new today from Shane's question about the time zone. Probably need to put that in, maybe I'll put that in a how-to in our documentation. So another new fun, exciting section of our docs is the learning project. There's all of these welcome projects that come with a lot of example jobs, right? The example job that I ran earlier with the job data would be in our enterprise, in the enterprise version of this project. We can, get connected with trial licenses, etc. But there's a whole tutorial, and there's a longer collection of how-tos. So maybe I'll add that how to set the time zone in various flavors of Rundeck out here, probably under the administration section.
Forrest, we do have another question in the Q&A if you want to take a look.
Windows authentication. So Mike says, my only question is on Windows Auth. Not a Rundeck user, we tend to have issues managing Windows systems around 80 auth, MFA, SSO. How do you address this, or could you walk through a quick example?
Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Mike. When you say not a Rundeck user, what are you?
Sorry, I meant that we aren't a Rundeck company, but we're looking into it. So I don't have any like specific example of where we're having an issue, but it's around one of my concerns with automation was we tend to have some issues. We are SSO wherever we can be and utilize MFA. So when we try to like automate something through, PowerShell or something like that, it's always a headache to deal with authentication. So I don't know how you guys are doing with those authentication or
MFA does get in the way, right, of automation for sure, because you can't really type in that number on the fly. That doesn't mean we haven't seen people do that. What I think is more or a better approach is using tools like Thycotic, CyberArk, those PAM tools to do one-time passwords for an automation solution. Because here, I'll kind of walk through what that would really look like. Here is our key storage system in Rundeck is where you store all of your passwords, secrets, etc. Right? These can be this particular one is just part of Rundeck, but you can redirect this to a backend of something like Thycotic that will offer you one-time passwords. So the automation would just pull that dynamic password or whatever the current password is in that solution, and then when it's done with it, maybe it can run a job to check it back in or send it back, or maybe there's just sort of that regular password change that's happening nightly or whatever schedule makes the most sense. That seems like a better fit for automation type solutions. When you say single sign-on, are you more worried about users authenticating to Rundeck or Rundeck authenticating to the Windows systems?
It would be Rundeck authenticating the Windows systems. This makes sense though. We own CyberArk. We don't utilize it as much as we should for stuff like this, but I think we could definitely get that to work. So that's a good
I would go with the one-time passwords, or you can do the service account that no one knows the password, right? You just let CyberArk set it on both sides, and then it's pretty well protected there. And we did just release that a few releases ago, that you can use CyberArk as your backend. CyberArk's a challenging one for sure, but it does work. I forget where it was.
I'll just mention you've got some middle ground there too between just a service account or one-time passwords. I mean, if you're using a service account that nobody knows the password to, you can also rotate that password on a regular basis, because Rundeck's only going to pull that password when it goes to connect to that remote node. So if you're rotating your passwords and you hooked up to CyberArk as your backend, you're always going to get the most recent password for that connectivity when Rundeck goes to connect to your servers.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the info.